We bring in our NHL Network insider, Elliotte Friedman. Elliotte, did this screw up date night on Saturday for the Friedman family?
You're assuming I can get a date in the first place, Jameson.
Well, we're assuming you're still married, Elliotte.
Yes, I am.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Yes, I am. It certainly caught us for a loop. There was a Saturday night podcast recording, and that certainly wasn't something that I was planning when Saturday began. By the way, that was a good debate, guys. I don't know why you're coming to me. I think that's better than anything that I could do. This certainly surprised me, and just a couple of points based on some of the things that you guys were talking about. I do believe, people are like, can Carolina offer him a long-term deal? He's an RFA. You're allowed to talk to Kotkaniemi. Like, there's no tampering here. But I do think they went down the road with Kotkaniemi on what a long-term deal could look like. And if Montreal chooses not to match, I don't think anybody would be surprised if, and he could be extended after January 1st. At some point in time, the Hurricanes go to Kotkaniemi and they do work out a long-term deal. Now, I think the only thing that's going to be interesting about that is, does Montreal come up and say, okay, well, there's circumvention here. I think it would be very difficult to prove, but because, there's some blood in the water between these two teams now, Montreal can certainly try to do it. But I do think that Carolina is doing this knowing that if they get Kotkaniemi, they're getting him at 6.1 this year, and they're getting him at a lesser number for several years down the road. I think they've had those conversations. So I think you guys are both right there. It's really interesting. I had a long talk with a GM today, and I think the other thing to mention here is that I think Carolina legitimately wants the player. Like, I do think they like Kotkaniemi. I do think the analytics they do say good things about Kotkaniemi. I think they believe he has a higher offensive upside than he's shown. Don't forget, Carolina's Team Finland. They've got a lot of Finnish players. They drafted a lot of Finnish players. They have a lot of people who would have seen this guy play and believe in it. And I think at the beginning, the big story is they really want the player. I talked to another GM today. He's not happy with what Carolina did. But the one thing that he understands is that it's really hard to find centers in this league. And what I think Montreal is doing right now, guys, is I think they're going through the NHL and they're saying, if we decide not to match, who are the centers we're going to target to replace them? And maybe the key to that deal is going to be the picks they get from the Hurricanes if they don't match. And the thing that me and this GM were doing, we're going through a bunch of teams, and there's not really a lot of guys because the center position is so hard to find. So he understands why Carolina would do it. He doesn't like the number. He thinks it's going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of comparable players in terms of teams negotiating with them. But, I think this is all going to come down to, and the name you're going to hear a lot is Christian Dvorak. Does Montreal find another center this week in the NHL that makes them say, okay, we can make that deal, and now we're not going to match the sheet?
So that's a lot to digest there. So like Marc Bergevin's going to take the week. He's going to go through his options. What do you think he does in the end, Elliotte?
I think, like I said, Johnny, I think it's going to come down to, does he find another option? Now, Brian, they didn't keep face-off stats when you played. Johnny, I found that you took 355 in the NHL, so he could be looking at the two of you.
I appreciate you not offering up my percentage, though, while I'm just giving the number. That's very kind of you.
All positive here. All positive here. But you know what? I think that's what he's doing, guys. I think Bergevin is going through all of the options. He says, okay, if I don't match this, who can I get? And the reason I think you're going to hear Dvorak's name come up a lot is, one, first of all, he's a really good player. Like, a lot of people don't know who he is. He's a good player. And I think he'd be a really nice fit in Montreal. Number two, Arizona kind of had him out there, and they were looking for futures, and Montreal can do that. For example, if they decide to take the picks, they get a first and a third, and that could certainly be a big part of a package that could go to Arizona. The other thing, too, about Dvorak is he's signed for 4 more years at 4.5. It's a really good contract. And, it makes sense for Montreal to do that. So I think you're going to hear his name a lot. But I just think that that's what Bergevin's doing. I think he's going through, okay, let's look down the Pacific Division. Does LA have a center? Does Anaheim have a center? Does San Jose have it? I think he's doing that. I think he's going throughout the league, and he's making a list of guys that he can target and say, if we decide not to do this, this is the option I'm going to have.
Does he get to Buffalo and ask if Buffalo has a center?
I think he's already done that. Here's the thing with Eichel and Montreal. Certainly the fact that Eichel's now represented by Pat Brisson, Marc Bergevin and Pat Brisson, they are tight. They've known each other for a long time. They are good friends, and I think that does it increase the percentage points that maybe Montreal does this? Yeah, it does. But do I think it's the overwhelming thing that gets it done? No, I don't. First of all, they still have to settle the injury situation. I'm not sure if Brisson's going to do that. I think Buffalo has a position here, and I don't think an agent change necessarily changes that. Number two, Buffalo's still asking a very high price. Number three, Montreal's talked with Buffalo about Eichel before. From what I heard, that their offer was a low ball. And the other thing, too, is if Montreal matches the sheet, they can't trade Kotkaniemi for a year. And I think that's a problem simply because I would guess, and this is kind of my feeling from talking to people, if Montreal was going to trade for Eichel, Kotkaniemi was going to be part of the package. So now you can't do that. So how you make a trade that makes sense without Kotkaniemi in it? I just think this whole situation complicates Montreal's ability to do this.
You guys are trying to figure out this offer sheet. My mind instantly jumps ahead to the first meeting, Montreal and Carolina, what the Storm Surge victory might look like and how spiteful that might be based on what we're seeing between these two squads right now.
I mean, Elliotte, are we seeing potentially a change in the culture of the way teams do business with this offer? It feels foreign to what we've seen in the past. Tom Dundon hasn't done anything, standard since he's entered the league. But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the whole thing with offer sheets, and I heard people say, Brian, that they think offer sheets will be over now because of what Carolina did. I don't believe that. Like, we've seen this before. Remember when Vancouver offer sheeted David Backes, what did St. Louis do? They came right back and offer sheeted Steve Bernier, who was a member of the Canucks at the time. Like, that if you are doing an offer sheet in this league, somebody's going to get revenge on you at some particular point. So I don't necessarily think this changes as much. I'll tell you this, like the analytically inclined teams, and Carolina definitely is one, they believe in the offer sheet as a weapon.
They should.
So I don't think that this is going away. I just think that if you do one, you have to be prepared for the revenge to come at some point. I'll tell you something else, and this is just me thinking this. I wonder if Montreal is looking at this and thinking and saying, okay, if we match on Kotkaniemi, does Carolina come back at us in a year if we haven't extended Suzuki and try the same thing? Like, you have to be prepared for all of these things now. So I'm sure all of this is flying through Montreal's head.
And what Suzuki would be worth, because he's way better than Kotkaniemi, and his negotiation gets very easy when he says, you just signed this guy for 6. I'm way better a player than he is. I can justify 8 or 9 quite easily.
Come play with your brother.
He's a number 1 center there. And the other thing too is, like, you take a look at Austin Matthews in Toronto, the deal he signed. Why did Toronto do that? Because they believed Arizona was going to 7-year max him. That was always the reason. They always believed if he got to restricted free agency the next year, he was getting a 7-year offer from Arizona at 20%. And I believe that was true, and I think Toronto believed that was true. If you really believe the threat is there, you have to be aware of these things.
Welcome to NHL Tonight, the offer sheet edition. We had so many more topics on Olympics, Ellie, all kinds of stuff. We're running out of time, so we'll let you run. We'll have you back some other time this week.
How many face-offs did I win, Elliotte? What was my percentage?
Yeah.
I did. You know what? I didn't check. I just looked at the number.
Was it above 40? You have to get back to me.
Okay, I'll tell you. Hold on one sec. Let me see how quickly I can
just said
rewind.
we're heavy. The producer's flipping right now.
That's
Johnny's
okay.
Like, let's look up my stats.
This is important.
Producers are always freaking out. That's what they do.
What do you got?
I got your career face-off percentage. It doesn't go by career, but I'll read you the numbers. 50, 53, 33, 50, 60, 0, 0, 30.77, 50, 50, 44.44, 31.58, and 25.
I started off amazing.
I didn't try quite as hard in the neutral zone as I got older.
Regression to the mean?
Regression to the mean and a small sample size in the early years.
I shouldn't have asked them.
Hey,
that's an ugly number.
Sour the mood. Elliotte, we always appreciate your mood and your insight. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.